What was your most serious thank F I double check moment? Answering exams and finished early. Double checked when the teacher reminded us that there was only 5 minutes left and saw that I hadn't answered the whole backside of a page. Luckily it was multiple choice. Though. Student pilot 8 years ago. Got fueled in a high wind training airplane. Instructor is ready to go. I had done the pre-flight before the fuel truck arrived. You can't see the fuel caps from the ground. I was about to start the engine but got out. Hopped up on the step. And found both caps loose. I think this applies. So summer 2010. My family is having the inside of the house painted. Hot as F. So my parents leave the upstairs window open day and night to let out the paint smell out and help it dry with the hot air. I really don't like this. I'm a naturally paranoid person. This went on for several weeks. We have a pretty big house. One day before I leave to school, I decided to go upstairs and shut the window and lock it. They can yell at me later if they want. When I came home that afternoon, the painter told me, hey, that big ass ladder you have on the side of the house was getting in the way. So I moved it. Hope that's okay. I responded, we don't have a biggest ladder. Apparently someone came up to the house and set up a ladder to get through the open window, but I'd closed it just by chance that day. I guess when they saw our painter coming they ditched it and split. Son ladder. Oddly enough, my parents kept opening the window at night and during the day after all that edit, yes. We came up on a free ladder. But I'm scared of heights. Almost submitted a test paper without my name on it. Almost forgot my room keys before a 6-hour drive back to my university. I was at a 4-way intersection at night when my light turned green. I was the only car on the road and in a hurry, but something in me felt like I needed to look left before I went right after I turned my head to look. A car without any headlights on ran the red light going probably 50 miles per hour. Had I just immediately gone instead of glancing left, I would have been T-boned and probably killed. Listen to your gut, people. I almost killed my niece's cat via washing machine. I was staying with my brother and his family for a bit when I first moved into the city. One day I threw a bunch of clothes in the machine. Went back to my room to get a sweater. Threw that into the machine on top of the curious feline that had jumped in while I was out of the room. Poured in detergent. And just about closed the lid when I decided to double check the pocket of my sweater. As soon as I moved it, out jumped the cat. Never told anyone, but I made a point of checking from then on. Looking through papers to shred, I opened an envelope and inside was a $2,500 check. It was a week from expiring and according to the paperwork, it was a refund from when we refinanced our mortgage. I once worked at a school where I had to look after the kids who stayed until their parents picked them up. Don't know what it's called in English. After school care. They usually had the classic little game where they would hide and I pretended not to know where they were and told the parents that I hadn't seen them all day. Problem is that they would do this with 2 or 3 at a time and then come out all together. Usually. One time this kid started hiding with some others at around 6 PM but didn't come out at all, so he kept hiding away until 7 PM at the end of my shift. Thank F that during my closing routine I found him in some ridiculous tiny little space because I totally forgot about him. I had about 40 to 50 parents coming in between 6 and 7. When his mother came to pick him up way later than expected, I acted all jolly, but I seriously would have closed off since I really thought all the children left. Not a proud moment. Don't know if this counts, but had a feeling something is off about my wife's behavior. Checked her phone. Never did before and felt weird. Found out she cheated on me. Led to a cascade of discovery LS. As in she was in a relationship with the guy and GKT pregnant from him. Had her abortion while visiting her family. Getting divorced now. Please don't take this as you should not trust your partner, but be aware of changes in behavior. Wake up late at night feeling thirsty. Everything is dark. I always keep a glass of water by the bed. I grope for the glass and grab it and am about to take a swig when I suddenly think, no. Better check. So I put it down and stumble groggily over to the light and switch on. And there's a huge cockroach floating dead in the glass. So I was feeling and hearing this thumping in my own head. It just would not stop. going on a few weeks. It was set to write around 60 thumps a minute. Extremely annoying. Like something was hitting the inside of my head lightly. I finally decide to go to the clinic and they tell me it is just an ear infection. I take the medicine and follow the orders. But it doesn't get better. A couple days later, it was still going on and my breathing felt like it was getting worse. My chest was hurting. So I made an appointment with my normal doctor. He thought my body just tricked me into hyperventilating. But as he was leaving and saying goodbye, he decided to have me go get blood work. Turns out my blood levels were almost non-existent. The paramedic that I ended up having to ride with told me that he had never seen someone with such low blood levels still conscious and coherent. One time I was putting my hair straightener away and I dropped it into the toilet. As soon as it hit the water, it started hissing and sizzling and I assumed it was because it was still hot. For a second I went to reach over and yank it out. But then I was like, wait, it's still plugged in. It never tripped the safety switch that bathroom outlets usually have because this house was old and didn't have bathroom outlets. I had to run a cheap extension cord from the office to the bathroom to do my hair. Literally almost grabbed a live electrical appliance that was shorting out in water. I was cleaning my room and throwing out a bunch of school papers, old envelopes, etc. I'm always nervous throwing out garbage bags in apartments. I guess the garbage chute seems more permanent than a bin that's collected weekly. Because there were so many papers and I was moving, I decided to double check the bag. I had an envelope of over $1,300 in savings bonds and tips I had hidden in my drawer earlier in the year. I felt like I made $1,300 that day. I had a job a while ago as a secretary in the Pentagon. My boss got a PDF every morning with a summary of military news. And it was my job to download it every morning and email it out every day to the boss and the whole unit. I was also reading Game of Thrones at the time. A pirated PDF copy. I had a copy on my work computer. One day, somehow my book got renamed to Day's News PDF on accident. And I attached it to the Day's News email. Right before hitting send, I decided to make sure I was sending out today's news, not the day before's. So I open the attachment and check. It loads. And I'm greeted by the cover of Game of Thrones. I had a default reaction. I had copied a PRN link to send to my BF, ended up not sending it, and later was emailing my students to update them about something or other. Accidentally pasted the link into the email and almost sent 20 college students a link to PRN Hub. A colleague saved me. I had printed around 500 letters for him and when I handed them over he said the phone number didn't look right. I dialed it to check it was a phone sex line. I had put 2 numbers the wrong way round. We changed our number after that in case any customers misdialed. So glad my colleague spotted it before those letters were sent. Veterinarian here. I asked for my assistant to bring me some glucose to inject into a 2-kilogram dog with hypoglycemia. He brings me this vial. And right as was about to open it, I looked at it. And it was potassium chloride, KCl. Which is used for euthanasia. Both were the same size and shape. But the one that would stop the dog's heart had a big black stamp on it. So it wasn't so hard to differentiate them. Extra, a professor of mine during a surgery asked for an antibiotic which needs to be diluted before used to inject after surgery was done. The intern brought the vial, already diluted. But instead of putting injection water into the bottle, he had actually put KCl. As the professor was injecting the antibiotic, she noticed the heart of the dog was stopping. But fortunately, the amount needed to kill the animal was a bit higher and they were able to save it. When they asked and saw what he had actually put in the bottle, she went nuts on him for not double checking it before diluting. I don't know what happened to the student. Ooh, I have one for this. I've lived in a few places over the years, but they all have one thing in common: spiders. And lots of them. At an early age I learned to always smack the heel of my shoes against the floor, my knee, etc. to knock out any spiders that might have crashed in there overnight. One day I was getting ready to leave the house and something interrupted that little ritual. Came back and couldn't remember if I had checked and was about to slip them on when I decided to make sure, and sure enough, There was one that fell out right onto my knee. But it wasn't any spider. No. It was a rare fine black widow. After jumping up and possibly shitting myself in the process, I found it during across the floor and dealt with it. But good lord, the thought of what might have happened if I hasn't double checked still makes my skin crawl to this day. My car is old enough that the lights don't turn themselves off. I have to do it manually. I have had my battery die many times because of this. On vacation in a different state. Many hours away from anyone who could help me get my battery recharged. And very nearly walked away with the lights still on. But turned around to check because I had a funny feeling. Very recently I changed a light bulb at work in a corridor that rarely got used. A long fluorescent bulb. As I was walking away, turning a corner, I realized the pitch of the hum of the light seemed off. Just seemed higher pitched than normal. I went back to check to make sure the light was on. It was on. On fire. Dunno if it was the bulb or fixture, but the whole thing was in flames. Light bulb was on though. Dealt with it. But if I had kept walking, building would have probably taken serious damage before sprinklers kicked in. I wasn't the one who double checked. But I am so thankful to the person who did. Story time. My high school decided to take the senior class to Six Flags at the end of our year. I had recently gotten over my fear of roller coasters and decided to ride the Superman ride. Little did I know, I had buckled my seatbelt completely wrong. If it wasn't for the worker who checks everyone's seatbelt before the ride starts, I would have flown out of my seat and died. I know that moment usually feels like an inconvenience, like hurry up and start the ride. But it seriously saved my life. Early in skydiving day, I put chest strap on incorrectly. Later I looked around and noticed everyone have it on differently from me. I realized if I jump without fix it, I'd fall out of my rig. So I quickly fix it. I had a 150cc scooter in college. Left my helmet outside one day and came back to put it on. Chock full of black widow spiders.